Welcome into the Lucas podcast. Lucas Frankel alongside Mike Lucas as the calendar shifts to December and championship weekend in college football. And Mike, I have so many opinions about what the Final Four should be, assuming the results go a certain way. And for my money, Pac-12 winner is in, loser is out. Let's start with that game because that game is here on Friday night. Oregon, Washington, Ducks are, I believe, favored by 9.5 points. Who do you like in this game and why?
I like Oregon. I bet on Oregon to win the first game. I was devastated when they didn't win, especially when they had the ball late. They went for it on fourth down. I love the call. I love being aggressive, and it didn't work. And kudos to Washington. They won that game. But I do think a Pac-12 team, almost under any circumstance, regardless of how chaotic the results get, ends up making the Final Four. I believe it'll be Oregon, despite their one loss earlier in the season. If Washington wins, they have to be an obviously undefeated Pac-12 champion. And yeah, you're going to say they don't have to be, but they're going to be. But I do believe Oregon not only wins the game, but also finds themselves in the Final Four. I believe that if you are ranking, take out resumes, and you're just going off who are the four best teams in the country, I do believe Oregon's one of the four best teams in the country. And even though they won't get in, if they lose, I still think they're a better football team than Washington.
So here's how this is going to shake out, this whole scenario. So the Final Four teams will be, I believe Georgia should make it either way. Win or lose versus Alabama, I believe Georgia is undoubtedly one of the four best teams in the country and is a shoo-in to be in. The second team to be in will be Michigan because Iowa is,
Iowa.
They're a solid team, but they're not near the caliber of Michigan. Yeah. If Iowa were to even compete in the game, lose by a field goal or lose by less than 7 points, I'd be shocked. So Michigan's number 2. The third team that will be in is the Pac-12 winner, either Oregon or Washington. And that leaves the fourth team to either be one of, I guess, 2 or 3 teams, depending on sort of exactly what happens. The first team would be Alabama. If Alabama beats Georgia, I believe Alabama should be in the 4. Despite the fact that even if to me, and the only argument you can make for Florida State, and Rodemaker as of now, there's a chance he might not even play on Saturday.
I saw that. Yeah, he's questionable.
Yeah, so and the line moved from like 5.5 to 1.5 in favor of Florida State. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. And for me, the only scenario where Florida State gets into this game is they have, in my opinion, they have to beat Louisville by at least minimum, I think, 2 touchdowns. They got to show
it has to be convincing, leave no doubt. And even with a backup or third string quarterback, Frank, I'm in total agreement. They have to beat the piss out of Louisville. That's the only way.
I could not agree more. There's all these Florida State defenders. Listen, there is the counter argument to that is that, last week Alabama had needed a miracle 4th and 31 touchdown to beat Auburn. Not a great team this year. You had Georgia who will beat Georgia Tech by only 8 points. So it's not like, all the powerhouse teams every week are going out there and, steamrolling the competition. So I get it from the Florida State fan perspective where, just because they haven't been dominating, since losing Jordan Travis, like the other teams that haven't necessarily been steamrolling the competition as well. So I do struggle with it in that regard because if they win by, 7 points, then I do see a potential argument that they would have like Georgia only beat Georgia Tech by 8 with a fully healthy team, and you're going to penalize us. In my opinion, and I know how the committee works, because usually every year I know, like, after the games are settled, I know how they think and I know what direction they like to go in. And if Florida State struggles with Louisville,
it's simple. They're out.
They're out.
And listen, and we could say it's not fair that we're going to evaluate a team without their best player in Jordan Travis. But the reality is he's not there. And the committee's job is to pick the 4 best teams at the end of the season. And I do think games matter. And I do think it will be a shaft to Florida State or a kick in the nuts if they were to be overjumped or overpassed by an Alabama, a Texas, an Oregon, or somebody who's outside the top 4 currently when they are going to win the ACC championship and be undefeated. But truth be told, that's the reality of the situation. You lose your starting quarterback, and it sucks. And if I was a Florida State fan, I would be furious
But Florida State,
But
the biggest reason why I don't want Florida State in the field is because, assuming they do make it and they have to face either Michigan or Georgia in the first round, they are going to lose by 40 points. It's going to be a non-competitive game. And honestly, who wants to see that? Who's dying to see Florida State get absolutely annihilated in the first round?
But
that's the biggest
that happens
argument.
every year, Frank. Like Cincinnati was the same way a couple of years ago, and Washington got in that way. And we've seen so many of these 4-versus-1 matchups. Frankly, there have been far more blowouts in that 4-1 matchup than there have been close games. Oklahoma,
right? But I truly believe that if you put an Alabama or a Pac-12 team or even a Texas in that game, I do believe it's significantly closer than
I agree.
A matchup against Florida State with their second or third string quarterback would be.
I 100% agree. And one of the things that sucks for Florida State is in previous seasons, there have been instances where had this exact same scenario with Florida State played out, they would still have a shot at the 4 seed regardless because the overall field just wasn't that good. There have been years where teams have made the 4 seed and the discussion between 4 and 5 and 6. Like, these teams all kind of suck. This year, there just happens to be 7 or 8 teams with legitimate resumes and a legitimate chance, at least in my mind, to beat anyone on any given Sunday. And right now, because of the quarterback situation at Florida State with Jordan Travis out, I don't think they're one of the teams that could legitimately win a national championship. Now, with that being said, in 2015, Ohio State did the similar thing with Cardale Jones. And shout out to my guy, Tyvis Powell, who was on the team defensive MVP of the 2015 championship game. So there is a precedent that a backup quarterback can come in. But one thing to remember with that, Ohio State beat Wisconsin 59-0 in the Big Ten championship game. Florida State has to beat Louisville 59-10 or something to solidify their spot. That's why that game is so important for their standings.
I don't think it has to be. I think it's got to be.
Well, and not 59-0, but like we said earlier, they have to legitimately, convincingly leave no doubt that even if the score was a 14-point game, they were eons ahead of Louisville to be able to.
And the last point I want to make is I don't give a flying what that Texas beat Alabama earlier in the season. To me, Alabama is a completely transformational team since then. And if Alabama wins, they are in. And even if Texas beats Oklahoma, I still think Texas. I honestly don't see, unless there's incredible chaos this weekend. I don't see a scenario where Texas gets into the 4. I just don't. And Alabama beating Georgia, I think would override that win earlier in the season for Texas. And I think Alabama's a different team now than they were then, and that's why you can't. Mike, I just know this is how it's going to work. There's no scenario where Texas gets in. There's just none.
Yeah, I mean, so
Texas
right now, as of 2:17 on Friday afternoon, the best win of the college football season is Texas going to Tuscaloosa and beating Alabama.
If Alabama beats Georgia,
If Alabama beats Georgia, the best win of the season is Alabama beating Georgia in the SEC championship game. And to me, that trumps it. It does suck for Alabama. For Texas, because you would like to think head-to-head games matter, but in reality, the committee's job is to put the 4 best teams in the championship. And
I mean, they do matter. I mean, I'm not saying they don't matter. They clearly do matter. I just think that
listen, if Alabama gets in over Georgia, they don't matter because you'd have 2 Power 5 conference champions, each with 1 loss, and the team that beat the other team head-to-head doesn't get in. So the game doesn't matter. The game's irrelevant.
Do you believe Georgia's in with a loss?
No, now I think in previous years, yes, but this year, because of the quality of teams 2 through 7, I think Georgia should be in regardless of loss or result. I don't think they will. Only one.
So who do you think?
SEC team
who would you put in over them? The Big 12 champion, Texas.
So if it plays out that Bama beats Georgia,
let's say Alabama, Michigan, Oregon, Florida State wins by 7, then Texas gets in. I mean, I guess
if Texas smokes Oklahoma, if it's close, then maybe. But if Texas smokes Oklahoma State or Florida State smokes Louisville, one of those 2 teams is going to get in. You can't. This year there are legitimately 7 teams, and I put Ohio State at the 7th, but it's really 6. It's really 6 that are playing this weekend in a must-win situation to get in. I think there's been years in the past where Georgia knew it could lose the SEC championship game because they were a lock for the playoff regardless. I just don't think that's the case this year with the quality of teams underneath that have a chance to improve and pad their resume when the last data point, which shouldn't count necessarily for more, but we know it does, when the last data point for a team like Georgia in this scenario would be a loss to Alabama, and a team like Texas could beat Oklahoma State by 45, both be one-loss teams. One is a conference championship, one doesn't. It gets hard. I think Georgia's one of the 4 best teams in the country, regardless of what happens, but I don't see them getting in.
I mean, the argument, so like it's not necessarily the teams with the 4 best resumes, it's the 4 best teams. And I think that the argument that's going to work in Georgia's favor in that scenario is that, all right, let's say Georgia, Texas, neutral site game. Who's favored? I think Georgia's favored by 6.5, 7 points. And then I think that's going to be the reason why Georgia will get in even with a loss. And that's the last point we'll make about that.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be the most exciting Saturday in a long time.
But check out my Twitter on Saturday night. When everything is settled, I will tweet out who the 4 will be. It may not necessarily be in the exact order, but I will know the 4 teams. And when they come out on Sunday at around 12:15 p.m. Eastern time, I will just quote tweet myself and be like, heard it here first, and I'll end up.
So if you're incorrect, if you get 3 of the 4 teams, what's your punishment? If you're gonna go out and say, come to my Twitter because I'm gonna lock it in. If you're wrong, people need a reason to pay attention.
I gotta think about it. Cam, so the Nets lost to the freaking Hornets on Thursday night, and this is the second game of the season that Cam Johnson single-handedly blew for the Nets. I don't know if you saw it, but so the first game of the season against the Cavaliers, he took that. He flopped against Donovan Mitchell, let him shoot a game-winning 3 instead of contesting the shot and actually playing real defense. And then on Thursday night, Nets down 1. Nets in transition with a chance to drive to the basket and win the game. Johnson decides not to drive to the basket. Instead, opts to shoot a 3, misses, ball game, Nets lose. I just thought, in that scenario, you're only down 1. Why are we settling for a 3? I feel like if he would have just drived to the hoop, given the momentum that he had in that situation, he definitely would have either made the shot or drew a foul. And I also don't love Johnson taking that shot there. I don't know.
That's
honestly,
more of my issue. I don't want Johnson taking those shots in the first place. I did see the replay, Frank, or at least the highlight of that. The NBA, they shoot so many threes. I don't even know what the line between a good and a bad 3 is anymore. It's kind of outrageous. I came 10 years too early. My game fits in today's NBA.
I guess if you're going to do that, I'd rather Cam Thomas or Mikal take that shot. That's the only beef I had about it.
That's my point. Yeah, it's not even the shot. It's who took it.
Anyway, just a really deflating loss. But anyway, I know like it's very easy. That's why honestly it's better if I don't watch the Nets this year, because whenever I do watch, I start getting really into it. So I try to stay away as much as possible. Interesting developments in the NBA this week. Mark Cuban, who I believe has said on the record that he's never selling the Mavericks. But guess what? He's selling the Mavericks. $3.5 billion. I've been trying to wrap my head around this for a long time, or since this news came out, to try to figure out like, because he's also leaving Shark Tank. So he's giving up these big jobs and opportunities he's had. I know he's still technically still going to be in charge of running basketball operations for the Mavericks, but we'll see how long or whatever, or how much of a front racing person he remains to be going forward. But I haven't been able to figure out why, because Mark Cuban is a very calculated individual. There's nothing that he just does spontaneously or on instinct or, impulse. It's very thought out. And so I was trying to figure out what could he know or what could he be thinking that we don't know? And I haven't been able to figure it out. I'm at a complete loss for why this guy who seemingly, lived for owning the Dallas Mavericks has, out of nowhere, completely out of the blue, is giving up, his pride and joy of the Dallas Mavericks. Granted, $3.5 billion is,
yeah, there's some financial reasons. I have an idea.
Certain amount of money.
So gambling is not legal in Texas at the moment.
Right. Okay. There's a thing about that he's trying to get a casino there, but why? But how does that matter whether he's owning the team or not? But go ahead.
I don't necessarily have the answer to that. I know they are trying, and we have connections in Texas. I work there. The state wants gambling to be legal. Ohio legalized gambling this year and made $20 billion off gambling. So you can make a ton of money owning an NBA team, a lot of money. You could also make a ton of money in the gambling world. And for a state as large as Texas, for him to sell off Shark Tank, for him to sell off the Mavs, I think it has to do something with him wanting to build a casino, be the first one to bring a casino to Texas. I guess maybe there's some correlation of him being a team owner, but also being so heavily involved in gambling. They could cook the books in a certain way. I don't have any specifics, but to me, this screams eventually when gambling is legal, sports gambling is legal in the state of Texas, Mark Cuban will be on the forefront of either opening a casino, opening a series of casinos, opening some sort of facility where they're going to bring in gajillions of dollars in sports gambling money. But to me, that's the only reason I could think of, unless he plans to run for president, which he said he doesn't want to do, or other stuff. But to me, that's the most likely scenario.
Yeah, but I mean, he's still running the team. He's still running basketball operations. So just by saying that, he's not owning the team anymore, he's still involved in every single basketball decision. So the whole idea about, he's trying to distance himself for gambling purpose, I don't know if that's necessarily true or not, because he's still gonna, like I said, gonna have his hands over every single decision they make, at least for the time being. We'll see how long it lasts, but that's why I'm still not sure, unless he just realizes, unless he knows deep down that the value, the NBA is sort of maybe, I don't know if I'm just speculating what he could be. He could be thinking that the NBA could be on a going, they peaked in terms of, the value of franchises and, once, you're seeing this wave of NBA franchises, and honestly, as sports in general, just the value of franchises in the last, 8 to 10 years has absolutely exploded. They've gone from, the Sixers selling for, $900 million to now these same exact teams being worth, over $3 billion. So maybe he sees maybe
it's reached its max. Maybe he says it's reached
potentially.
Its max. The other thing I can think of, and to me this makes no sense because I feel like this would make everybody money, but the NBA is going to expand to 32 teams here at the next CBA and TV deal. They're going to add a team in Vegas and they're going to add a team in Seattle. And the salary cap is supposed to skyrocket as well. So I'm not sure how that would cost him money. I feel like that would make him money, but maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe he wants to buy stake in the new team, which would be frankly odd. I can't imagine Mark Cuban doing that, but
like I said, he's still in charge of it's not like he's gone from the Mavericks.
For now, though, I mean, like you said, for now, this could be a step-by-step process of him stepping away completely from the Mavericks, which would feel weird. And we don't know the answer. I'm just speaking out loud thinking, but to me, it screams some sort of gambling money play, casino play, and/or in a much more unlikely scenario, him wanting to be the first to get in on this new team in Seattle or Vegas or London or Vancouver or wherever they go.
Or maybe he'll buy the Jets, or the Yankees.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I would love that.
I would love Mark Cuban to buy out.
If you're speaking of that, Jimmy Haslam's in some hot water here in Cleveland.
Yeah, but Mark Cuban is not going to downgrade himself from owning. I mean, I guess owning an NFL team is greater than owning an NBA team. I wonder what the Browns are worth. That's a good question.
Are you looking up right now?
4 point. Well, according to this, what I just Googled, they're worth anywhere between, around. This says $4.62 billion. So I mean,
right. What I mean, Josh Harris just bought the Commanders for $6 million. So
six. I mean, if he bought them for $6 million, that'd be the
$6 billion. Sorry, $6 billion.
Yeah, so that probably sounds about right. But we'll see what happens there. It's like the whole Windhorse thing. Like, I got my fingers up. Like, I got the whole, that's what I think. That's what I thought about here with Mark Cuban, because it just didn't make any sense. But we'll see what happens there. Let's move on to the New York Jets. I cannot believe that they are running Tim Boyle out of quarterback. First of all, I don't understand how he even made an NFL roster. He threw 1 touchdown and 13 interceptions in college. The amount of quarterbacks that were highly productive in college that never taste the NFL is astronomical. And you're talking about a guy who was awful in college, terrible, 1 touchdown, 13 interceptions, and this guy's on an NFL roster, and he's still in the league 5 years after he was signed as an undrafted free agent. I have not been able. It's like Mark. I haven't been able to figure out how this guy made a team. The best explanation I heard was that he's a pros pro, and he'll do whatever you ask. And I guess there's a market for that player on a team that just runs the scout team and whatnot. But I just don't understand how in previous years in college football you see quarterbacks of powerhouse teams have no career in the NFL, and this guy was UConn is essentially a mid-major college football team, was terrible, and is now starting games for the Jets. And I have no idea how he got to be in this situation. And to me, the Jets will not win a single game with Tim Boyle quarterback. I'm
Do you
not
think
saying
he's
that.
that much worse than Zach Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, Zach Wilson. Say what you want about Zach. I mean, Zach Wilson's beaten some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's beaten Joe Burrow. He's beaten Jalen Hurts. He's the only quarterback in the NFL this season to beat Jalen Hurts. He's beaten, Josh Allen multiple times. It's not like he's only beaten, the Dorian Thompson Robinsons and, PJ Walkers. Like, he's beaten legitimate quarterbacks. So this notion that, Zach Wilson, and listen, I don't think Zach Wilson is good, but Tim Boyle is a catastrophe. And I don't understand how this guy who, like I said, has accomplished nothing in his football career is starting games in the NFL. It is so shocking to me. And I don't understand why the Jets have completely just passed over Trevor Siemian.
Well, the Siemian thing makes no sense, and I have no answer for that. So let me preface what I'm going to say with that completely. Trevor Siemian should be the starting quarterback for the Jets, and it makes no sense, and I cannot figure out why he is not the starting quarterback for the Jets.
Unless he's been absolutely terrible in practice, in which case you would just release him, but go ahead.
However, Tim Boyle was never supposed to play for the Jets this season. Like, let's put context to this. Tim Boyle was not brought to the Jets to be their savior. Tim Boyle was there because he's friends with Aaron Rodgers, and he was going to be their third or fourth string emergency quarterback. Then Aaron Rodgers tears his Achilles. He's out. Zach Wilson's the guy. He turns out that he was not living up to what the Jets needed. You decide to make a change. Tim Boyle was terrible last week, granted. But you go back to Zach Wilson, and maybe I don't know how much worse he was than Zach Wilson. I watched that whole game, and yeah, once again, he was terrible. I'm not defending or trying to find any silver lining there, but Zach Wilson was pretty damn horrible too. So you're damned. It's dancing with the devil you know or dancing with the devil you don't. And I think we know what Tim Boyle is. I know we know what Zach Wilson is. So I'm sure the Jets are just going to let this play out. And frankly, at this point, the season's over, Frank. You could try telling yourself it's not. The season's over. Tim Boyle is the perfect tank machine. Because as you said,
yeah,
but
then why is but then every other day I gotta hear Aaron Rodgers saying, if we're in it, I'm coming back.
Because Aaron Rodgers ruined the Jets this year. I told you this a couple weeks ago. Aaron Rodgers ruined the Jets this year. His inability just to say, I tore my ACL, I'm out. Go get someone as a stopgap.
He didn't tear his ACL. He tore his Achilles.
His Achilles, whatever it is.
It's not whatever.
Yes, me messing up the injury. The fact that Aaron Rodgers would not just accept the fact that this sucks, I'm out. Go figure out somebody, but his little tiny ego was too fragile that God forbid they got Josh Dobbs and he played well. That the quarterback kind of can't beat out Josh Dobbs. Like, shut up, Aaron.
Come on, that's not what this is about.
Yes, it is.
He wasn't afraid of Josh Dobbs keeping him from starting. Aaron Rodgers had that job.
But the Jets weren't in a position to go out and get a quarterback because Aaron Rodgers kept saying, "I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna come back. Just stay afloat. Stay afloat. I'm coming back." Well,
but you're
at the deadline. You knew Zach Wilson was trash.
If they would have just gotten Josh Dobbs, they would have won the Super Bowl. It's
not even Josh. He's just one example. But you can't tell me with a straight face. And the Browns, we killed the Browns for the same exact thing. So I'm not saying anything I didn't say about the Browns. If you have a defense and a team and a roster that is good enough to compete for a Super Bowl, you cannot sit back at the deadline. And I'll give you the Browns example and the Jets because they're a little different but the same. In the Browns case, Deshaun, who was not out for the season at that point, however, had just come back from the shoulder. He was dealing with an ankle injury. There was no guarantee that he was going to be healthy again this season, right? It was all up in the air. And PJ Walker, who was the backup at the time, was statistically and analytically the single worst quarterback in the NFL this year. And despite going 2-1 as a starter, the Browns won in spite of him, not because of him. We were not able, and I was not able to look at Andrew Berry and say, how can you go through the rest of this season and expect your veterans on this team to buy in and continue to buy in, week out, when you know there's a chance that you may have to put your playoff hopes in the hands of PJ Walker? Now they went out and signed Joe Flacco. We'll see how he plays this week. DTR came back, and mind you, DTR got benched for PJ Walker, and he played better against Pittsburgh and Denver, so he's kind of rebounded a little bit, and I have a little more confidence in him. But I couldn't look at the GM and say, this team's good enough to compete for a playoff spot and win a playoff game or two. And in a city that hasn't had any playoff success in 30 years, how can you not go find some sort of insurance policy? It doesn't have to be great. It just has to be bad. We'll take bad because PJ Walker was historically bad.
I mean,
for the
couldn't you
Jets.
argue Trevor Siemian's exactly that though?
Yeah, then start him. That's my point. Like, and Trevor Siemian was a guy we talked about the Browns looking into. For the Jets, you had the guy there. Now, for whatever reason, and once again, I don't know the Trevor Siemian situation as well as you do. There's got to be a reason he's not playing because he can't be on the field. He can't be worse than Zach Wilson. He can't be worse than Tim Boyle. So it has to be
the only argument for Tim Boyle is that he's been with Hackett before, and Hackett just trusts him more to.
And Hackett sucks. What has Hackett ever done without Aaron Rodgers? I'm not sure if being tied to Nathaniel Hackett is a good thing or a bad thing.
I mean, you could argue the sort of same thing for. I mean, Mike McCarthy's doing a great job with Dak this year, but like, Aaron Rodgers also made the old Giants coach, whatever his name was. What was the guys they brought over from Green Bay with the mustache?
Green Bay. Tom Coughlin?
No. The Giants had a coach from Green Bay. He was your offensive coordinator. Then he came to the Packers. He came to the Giants. It was absolutely Ben McAdoo.
Oh, Ben McAdoo. Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers made Ben McAdoo. So like people, all right, it's so hang on. So it's like the same thing with like anyone who worked with Peyton Manning, anyone who worked with Bill Belichick, any of those coaches. Oh, just because they touch greatness, then that they can translate that greatness into other players. It's the most illogical and just illegitimately wrong point.
We're agreeing here
that Hackett sucks.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know that he sucks, but I mean, I guess given the fact that how well Russell Wilson is playing now under a different head coach, I guess you could make the point that's a referendum on Hackett, but I don't know. It's so hard to say. The reality is, Mike, and you sort of made this point before, is that the Jets are at, whatever Aaron Rodgers says goes. And if he wants Hackett, if he wants Saleh, if he wants Joe Douglas, and those are going to be the guys.
You're stuck, yeah.
But the Jets, they just got to, and do I believe if they would have had, obviously Kirk Cousins ended up tearing his Achilles too, but if like Kirk Cousins was on this team, what's the ceiling? They're probably, a wild card team is the ceiling. Maybe win one playoff game max. With Aaron Rodgers, is a Super Bowl. So you lose Rodgers, season's essentially over. Do I think they're tanking with Tim Boyle? No, I just think that Hackett thinks that he just trusts Tim Boyle to execute the offense more at this stage than he probably does Trevor Siemian, without knowing anything about why they're not playing Trevor Siemian. That's the best I can do in that situation.
But, and if that's the case, Frank, then shame on Hackett for not simplifying a system for Trevor Siemian, because I watched Tim Boyle. I didn't see him at UConn, but I did watch the Black Friday game. He doesn't have arm talent. It's not like he's got a crazy arm that they got to teach him how to play quarterback. Like, he couldn't even get the ball to the end zone from the 50-yard line.
Yeah. I mean, no argument for me there. I just, like I said, I just don't understand. In the history of football, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a quarterback who had worse college stats to spend as much time in the NFL as Tim Boyle has. There's no other guy who probably even comes close to, for being honest.
I can't imagine a quarterback's ever gotten picked up that threw one touchdown in college. Frankel, you realize he has one more college touchdown than you and I have combined.
So I'm sure you remember Colt Brennan, the late Colt Brennan.
Yeah, he had like 1,000 touchdowns.
So Colt Brennan, I don't believe ever started a game in the NFL. In his college career, Colt Brennan threw for 131 touchdowns and 482 interceptions. And one year he threw for 58 touchdowns. I believe that set like a Division I record for a season. Never sniffed a start in the NFL. Tim Boyle threw one touchdown in college and is starting games in the NFL. Like I said, but whatever. But I can't handle it. Anyway, Jets are not going to win a game with Tim Boyle as quarterback, and whatever. Tommy DeVito. The one thing you could say about Tommy DeVito, I don't know how good he's going to be or what his career is going forward after this, but man, does that guy have swagger? He wears that TD necklace. He truly believes that when he goes out there, he is the best, not only quarterback on the field. I think he actually thinks in his mind he's the best player on the field at any given moment. And I feel like if the Giants would have just let him throw the ball in that game against the Jets, that the Giants would have probably won that game, but they opted not to, and they ended up losing. But since then, he's most touchdowns ever in a Giants quarterback's first two career starts. That's not a fluky stat. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how good the Cowboys touchdowns came in complete garbage time when they call up the dogs. But
yeah, I don't know how good he's going to be or what his career is going to look like after this. But all I know about Tommy DeVito is that a huge part of being an NFL quarterback is believing that you can
confidence.
do it and having that, everyone mentality. Baker Mayfield has that mentality too. So like, it's not everything, but it's a big part of it. And DeVito's got that swagger you need to be a quarterback. Who knows what his career is going to be after this? Because I don't think he'll ever start again for the Giants after this season. But I'm curious to see what the future holds for him.
He's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Let's just make that very clear. He's not a starting quarterback, but Tommy DeVito has probably carved out a 10-year backup. He probably carved out 2 backup contracts. And he's going to make $10 to $20 million in his career. And he's going to be a great story. And he's the kind of guy like Gardner Minshew, who he could come in and give you a little life to a team, a little energy jolt. And Minshew's probably a little better. I mean, he's done a really good job in Indianapolis this season. But I think Tommy DeVito is a guy who will be in the NFL for the next 8 years. And in Madden 2031, someone's going to put Tommy DeVito as their starting quarterback and lead the Giants or whatever team to the Super Bowl. He's not a starter though.
We'll see. I just love his swagger. That's just what sticks out to me about Tommy DeVito, and the fact that he grew up about 10 minutes from where I grew up, Cedar Grove, New Jersey. Joe Flacco likely to start for the Browns this week. Joe Flacco is atrocious. I was highly against the Jets signing him because he's just so, I think, over the hill. But obviously, desperate times call for desperate measures in Cleveland. But Flacco's just a debacle. Even though he led that epic comeback for the Jets against the Browns last year, that's probably why the Browns signed him, because they saw that we're like, oh, maybe he could do this for us. But that's fool's thinking. So I don't see anything happening with that.
We have talked ourselves into, by the way, in Cleveland, Flacco being competent enough to.
All right, well, good luck with that, because he's not going to, because he cannot move anymore. So as soon as there's an ounce of pressure, he's just going to, he's like a dead duck. So good luck with that. Yankees winter meetings start this weekend. They have to get Juan Soto. They screwed. And if there's a way that Brian Cashman can send the Padres Giancarlo Stanton, Gleyber Torres, and one or two pitching prospects, a Drew Thorpe and a Clark Schmidt. I mean, you got to do that yesterday, and you'll worry about signing him to a contract after that. And the Yankees have to do this. They have to change the direction and the fortunes of the franchise. There's a lot of negative energy around the team right now. Get Juan Soto in the building, and you'll right a lot of wrongs. And Brian Cashman, I don't know. I don't think has what it takes to be a good general manager anymore. But this will heavily swing that in the other way if the Yankees can pull off getting Juan Soto. They better do it.
Yeah, Soto's the guy who he looks like a Yankee. His swing with that short porch in right field would be perfect for Yankee Stadium. The whole experiment in San Diego with Bogarts, Machado, Soto, Tatis. I mean, Blake Snell's probably on his way out as well. So, I think their owner went all in for a little bit. I think didn't he just pass away?
Yeah, he just died.
Yeah, R.I.P. I don't even know his name, but do you know his name, Frank? No, don't look it up. So if you don't know off the top of your head, then I feel bad.
Peter Seidler.
Peter Seidler, yeah, R.I.P. to Peter Seidler. I actually know someone who knew him, who said he was a great guy. So thoughts and wishes to his family. But now that he's out, they're going to have to break down that high-powered, high-paid roster, and the Yankees would be the perfect landing spot for Soto. And if there's any way you could add Giancarlo Stanton to that trade to get him out of here, send him to San Diego for a bit of a rebuild, I would do almost anything in my power to make that happen.
Could not agree more, but it would be a huge win if they were to do it, and including Stanton. The deal was just cherry on top of everything. But that will do it for this edition of the Lucas Lucas podcast. We'll see you all next week when I correctly predict the Final Four in college football, and there is no chance that I am wrong. And we'll just leave it at that.
Peace.